Hello everybody, today I want to go over a section of the new book, Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view, where Obi-Wan, Force Ghost, is talking to Luke, and Obi-Wan is kind of going through his own thoughts on why he didn't tell Luke about Vader being his father. And I actually really like this section. There were some people like ragging on it before the book even came out, so it was cool to read it and see what it's actually all about. I like it, hopefully you do too. Let's just get right into it. It's Obi-Wan on Dagobah right after Yoda dies, thinking about, talking to Luke now. So, hope you enjoy. Let's get right into it, and of course, let me know what you think in the comments. Obi-Wan hesitated another moment, unwilling to intrude on such a private moment. Already, the second attempt to reach Luke was spinning out of his control. Not only had Luke just watched the second of his Jedi Masters die before his eyes, but Obi-Wan sensed that Yoda had told Luke the truth about his father. For so long, Obi-Wan had been sure that Luke should not learn the whole truth of Vader's identity until he had completed his Jedi training. For him to learn the truth so suddenly, so soon before his final testing, it could send him into the darkness. The danger was still there, but Obi-Wan sensed an openness, a waiting inside his pupil, even as grief and loneliness washed through him. Now that he had joined the Force, Obi-Wan sometimes found it difficult to anchor his consciousness to a single place and time. Past, present, and future were all equally available to him. As he approached the hut, an image returned to Obi-Wan that threatened to draw him elsewhere. He heard his own torn and anguished scream as his master Qui-Gon was cut down in his duel against Darth Maul. His first instinct was to brush the memory aside, but something told him the Force was trying to communicate something important to him. He allowed the memory to fade on its own, and resolved to proceed even more carefully than before. Now he drew near to Luke, heard the tremor in the boy's voice as he said, "I can't do it, R2. I can't go on alone." Before he could speak, Obi-Wan found his next words easily through the will of the Force. "Yoda will always be with you." Luke's head turned instantly. "Obi-Wan." Obi-Wan approached as Luke ducked beneath his X-Wing and crossed to meet him. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked urgently, and worry, even fear, tinging in his voice. For a moment, it was as if Anakin stood before him, returned from darkness, from death. "You told me Vader betrayed and murdered my father," Luke said. Now Obi-Wan thought of his last meeting with Leia, the risk he'd taken, and even telling her a little about her parents. "Your father was seduced by the dark side of the Force," Obi-Wan said. "He ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader. When that happened, the good man who was your father was destroyed. So what I told you was true," Obi-Wan continued, from a certain point of view. Obi-Wan sensed the struggle within Luke's heart, beneath a layer of calm, lay a sea of surging emotion. Darkness and light intertwined. Luke's darkness surged against the light, but his better nature, while quieter, was the more powerful of the two for now. Of course, this was not the first time that Luke had struggled so much. Before, it had been attachment to his friends that threatened to pull him in the wrong direction. Even after Obi-Wan warned him, Luke's voice broke. From a certain point of view? The last time he'd spoken to Luke, Obi-Wan's voice had sounded hollow and brittle in between his own ghostly ears. He could read in Luke's posture that he decided to leave Dagobah and risk everything to save his friends had already been made. It was maddening how like his father he looked, with his high cheeks, his shining blue eyes, and during the Clone Wars, Anakin had risked his own life over and over to save his friends as well. Over the years, Obi-Wan had wondered so many times what would have happened if he had taken Anakin by the shoulders, shaken him, screaming at him, saying, "Don't destroy yourself to punish the Order for our failures. You're worth so much more than this. When I first knew him, your father was already a great pilot, but I was amazed at how strongly the Force was with him," Obi-Wan said. Another unbidden memory. Anakin's round, childish face. "I took it upon myself to train him as a Jedi. I thought that I could instruct him just as well as Yoda. I was wrong." "There is still good in him," Luke said, and it was the last thing Obi-Wan expected to hear. These were the last words Padme had said to him, and to hear them now from her son made Obi-Wan feel as if, for all that he had joined the Force and become one with the infinite part, he could still feel small and shocked. How to explain to this young man that it mattered little, if at all, whether there were shards of Anakin's true and noble heart buried beneath the rotten, scabrous surface of Darth Vader. He worshipped power and desolation, committed himself to spreading darkness through the galaxy, because he believed that what light there was could never triumph. "He's more machine now than man," Obi-Wan said, "twisted and evil." But he knew Luke would never be convinced. Maybe this was the moment Obi-Wan had been waiting for. Maybe it was time he told Luke the truth. But how much of it? He made his decision, remembering the last time he fought Vader. "Have you come to destroy me, Obi-Wan?" Vader had asked. "I will do what I must," Obi-Wan replied, fighting him. The duel that showed Obi-Wan Anakin was gone. "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did." Obi-Wan remembered Anakin, Vader, saying in that moment. "I can't do it, Ben," Luke said with a shake of his head. "You can't escape your destiny," Obi-Wan said. Again, his voice sounded tiny and far off in his own ears. "You must face Darth Vader again." "I can't kill my own father," Luke exclaimed. Those weren't the words Obi-Wan had expected to hear. He'd expected, "I can't beat him," or "He's too powerful." Obi-Wan held Luke's gaze for a moment, then looked away with a sad shake of his head. "Then the Emperor has already won," he said. "You were our only hope." He felt thick as mud. He was missing something vitally important. "Yoda spoke of another," Luke said. "Leia. Years ago, after rescuing her and returning her to the Organas, meeting Vader in single combat, unleashing on him an avalanche of power, Obi-Wan had let go of his regret for the past and terror of the future. Yes, darkness swept across the galaxy, and every day the Empire had tightened its oppressive grip, but he'd remembered the joy of life, taking delight in the twins, even as they knew nothing of each other. Even as years passed, Obi-Wan thought of Leia as the same little girl he'd spoken to on the landing pad, but he had followed her progress carefully. Something electrifying had occurred to him when he watched a recording of a speech that she'd delivered to the Senate. Her rhetorical style was sometimes gentle, sometimes fiery, each swell and retreat applied deftly, sometimes in the same sentence. At first he'd wondered where he'd heard it before, until he realized he hadn't heard it at all. He'd felt it in the sparring sessions with Anakin, in his duels with Vader after his former pupil had fallen to the dark side. Leia's voice and bearing were a lightsaber, and she wielded it with mastery. Obi-Wan didn't think. Instead, he emptied his mind and let the Force shine through him. This was the crucial moment, his last chance to help Luke turn the tide. He wondered what he would say, was still wondering when he heard his own voice. "The other he spoke of was your twin sister, Leia," he said. And it wasn't a question. "Leia's my sister." Obi-Wan couldn't help but smile. "Your insight serves you well." His smile quickly gave way to a frown. Obi-Wan was still missing something. "Bury your feelings deep down, Luke. They do you credit, but they could be made to serve the Emperor." Luke hesitated only for a moment before sitting cross-legged by Obi-Wan, and for some time the two of them communed in companionable silence. "That's how he defeated your father without a battle." Luke nodded slowly, taking in everything Obi-Wan had told him. How like Anakin he looked then. Luke's father had worn the same hooded expression whenever Obi-Wan or another elder Jedi handed him an unexpected lesson. The similarities between them terrified. No, Obi-Wan stopped short. The similarities between Anakin and Luke should have terrified him, but they didn't. This was the detail Obi-Wan had missed. Everything he'd said to Luke was true, and Luke favored his father quite a bit in most ways, but there was something quieter in his temperament, for all the darkness and light still struggled within him. The boy was similarly terrified and enraged by the suffering of others, both strangers and those he held dear. But where Anakin had always felt himself an outsider, set apart from his allies, destined to fail or triumph alone, Luke saw himself not as a hero or as a martyr, but as one thread in the tapestry of life. He intuitively understood himself as an expression of the Force, drawing his power from it, not in great draughts, but in small, careful sips, taking only as much strength as needed for the task at hand. There was a great deal of Anakin in him, but he had inherited mainly Anakin's best qualities. Obi-Wan hadn't killed Anakin Skywalker, but neither had Vader. The best of him lived on in Luke and in Leia. He realized all at once that Luke was watching him carefully, that his expression had been entirely open. Luke must have seen his relief, his elation. "What is it, Master?" Luke asked. Obi-Wan shook his head, still grinning. So this was the lesson the Force had sought to teach him. It's so good to see you, Luke. I should have said so before. "Ben, am I ready for this?" Luke asked. "Trust in the Force, Luke," Obi-Wan said, "and in yourself." So I really enjoyed that. To me, that was a lesson for Obi-Wan, a moment of learning, teaching for Obi-Wan, to know that Anakin, while he can never truly be completely gone, he lives on the best parts of him in Luke and Leia. And yes, he does sense darkness in Luke, of course he does. Luke is the son of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. There's absolutely darkness in him. We see that in Return of the Jedi, we see that in the sequels, of course, and I think Luke fears himself. I think he fears the darkness in himself. I made a video on the Return of the Jedi novelization. Every time Luke acknowledges the darkness with him, he knows it's there. Obi-Wan knows it's there. I don't think we should pretend that Luke was just completely good. He absolutely was not. That's the appeal of Return of the Jedi. That's why the Emperor feared and was obsessed with him. So, Obi-Wan acknowledging that, and then in the end realizing that Luke is good, is really important and necessary. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.